Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Endeavour, staring at the massive alien ship that had appeared in their sector 3 days ago. The vessel was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It stretched for miles, its surface covered in strange symbols that seemed to shift and change as he watched. The ship belonged to the Zenthari, a race of tall, gray-skinned beings who claimed to represent something called the Galactic Survival Council. "Captain, they're requesting another communication," said Lieutenant Amy Parker from her station. She was young, barely 25, but had proven herself capable during their long journey from Earth. Her medical training had saved more than one crew member during their deep space mission. "Put them through," Jake replied, adjusting his uniform. The main screen flickered to life, showing the imposing figure of Commander Vextal. The alien leader stood 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed with an inner light. His voice carried the weight of centuries when he spoke. "Human Captain Morrison," Vextal began, his words translated by the universal communication device the aliens had provided. "Your species has requested membership in the Galactic Federation. This is not a simple process. Every species must prove they can survive in the harsh realities of space." Jake nodded, keeping his expression neutral. "We understand, Commander. What do you need us to do?" "You must complete the survival course," Vextal explained. "It has been used for over 10,000 years to test new species. The course takes place on the moon of Kepler 442c. It consists of 5 different environments, each designed to test your abilities in different ways." Dr. Lisa Grant, the mission's chief scientist, stepped forward. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and graying hair. "How long does this course typically take?" Vextal's expression was unreadable. "The standard completion time is 100 of your Earth years. The fastest time was achieved by the Corvani race, who finished in 73 years. They lost 40% of their population in the process." The bridge fell silent. Jake could feel the weight of the moment. 100 years meant that none of them would live to see the completion of the course. It would be their children and their children's children who would finally finish what they started. "What happens if we refuse?" asked Rick Collins, the mission survival expert. He was a weathered man in his 40s with scars from countless dangerous expeditions on Earth. "Then your species remains isolated," Vextal replied. "You will have no access to galactic trade, technology, or protection. In a universe filled with dangers, isolation often means extinction." Jake looked around at his crew. 200 of Earth's best and brightest had volunteered for this mission. Scientists, engineers, doctors, soldiers, and survival experts. They had left Earth knowing they might never return. But this was beyond what anyone had imagined. "We need time to discuss this," Jake said finally. "You have 1 standard day," Vextal replied. "The course begins whether you participate or not. Other species are waiting for their turn." The communication ended, leaving the bridge in uncomfortable silence. Jake called for a full crew meeting in the main assembly hall. Within an hour, all 200 crew members had gathered. "You've all heard the situation," Jake began. "We came out here to make contact with alien life and secure Earth's future. We found both opportunity and challenge beyond anything we expected." Maya Torres, the chief engineer, raised her hand. She was a brilliant woman from Mexico who had designed many of the Endeavour systems. "Captain, what exactly is this course? What are we walking into?" Dr. Grant consulted her tablet, which contained all the information the aliens had provided. According to their records, the course consists of 5 biomes. First is a toxic swampland with poisonous water and deadly plant life. Second is a desert with extreme temperatures and acid storms. Third is a frozen wasteland with temperatures reaching -200 degrees. Fourth is a radiation-soaked desert with 3 times Earth's gravity. Fifth is something they call a temporal maze, where time moves differently in different areas. Chris Bailey, a young engineer fresh from college, whistled low. "No wonder it takes 100 years. That sounds impossible." "The aliens don't think like us," said Tony Brooks, the team's best scout. He was a quiet man who had spent years exploring dangerous territories on Earth. They're methodical, careful. They'd probably spend decades just studying each environment before attempting to cross it. Amy Parker stood up. What about the other species? How did they approach it? Dr. Grant scrolled through more data. Most species send small groups initially, then build up infrastructure over generations. They establish permanent settlements, study the environments, and slowly adapt their technology. It's a gradual process. That's not how humans work, said Kelly Martinez, one of the youngest crew members. She was barely 21, a communications specialist who had impressed everyone with her quick thinking. We don't wait around for generations. We figure things out as we go. It's suicide, muttered Ben Clark, the team's communications officer. We're talking about environments that have killed thousands of aliens over the centuries. Maybe, said Jake, but consider the alternative. Earth remains alone in the universe. No allies, no advanced technology, no protection from whatever dangers might be out there. And we know there are dangers. The aliens have made that clear. Doctor. Ryan Cooper, the team's physicist, raised his hand. Captain, I've been thinking about this. The aliens expect us to fail, right? They think we're too young, too inexperienced as a species. That seems to be their assumption, Jake replied. Then, maybe that's our advantage, Ryan continued. They've designed this course based on how alien species think and act, but we're not like them. We might see solutions they can't imagine, or we might die horribly in the first few hours, Ben Clark added grimly. Jake looked around the room. At the faces of his crew. These were people who had volunteered to leave Earth forever, to fly into the unknown on humanity's behalf. They had already proven they were willing to take incredible risks. I won't order anyone to participate, Jake said finally. This has to be voluntary. But I want everyone to understand what we're facing. If we succeed, we open the door to a galaxy full of possibilities for humanity. If we fail, we probably die, but Earth will know we tried. What about the time limit? Asked Maya Torres. 100 years means none of us will see the end. Maybe, said Jake. But maybe not. The aliens think in terms of their own capabilities. They're cautious, methodical. They can't imagine completing something like this quickly because they've never tried. Dr. Grant nodded slowly. The captain has a point. Every species that has attempted this course has followed the same basic pattern. They establish bases, study each environment for years, then carefully proceed. What if we just do that? What do you mean? Asked Chris Bailey. What if we go in fast and adapt as we encounter problems? What if we use our entire team at once instead of sending small groups? What if we take risks that other species wouldn't dare? The room buzzed with conversation as people discussed the possibilities. Jake watched their faces, seeing the shift from fear to curiosity to determination. All right, Jake said, calling for quiet. Let's put it to a vote. All in favor of attempting the course. Hands began to rise around the room. One by one, 200 of Earth's best and brightest voted to risk everything on an impossible challenge. The vote was unanimous. Commander. Vextol received their answer with what might have been surprise, though it was hard to tell with alien expressions. Very well, humans. The course begins at dawn tomorrow. May your species prove worthy of the stars. As the alien ship moved away to observe from a safe distance, Jake looked out at the harsh moon where they would either make history or die trying. Either way, they would do it as humans, in their own way, on their own terms. The first light of dawn broke over the alien moon as Captain Jake Morrison led his team toward the course entrance. The massive stone archway rose from the ground like ancient bones, covered in symbols that pulsed with dim light. Beyond it lay the first challenge, a swampland that stretched to the horizon, filled with murky water and twisted trees that seemed to move on their own. Remember the plan? Jake said into his communicator. We go in fast, we adapt quickly, and we don't wait. Around to study things to death? Dr. Lisa Grant checked her scanner one last time. The readings were not encouraging. Toxin levels are off the charts. The water contains at least 15 different poisons. The air has acidic particles that will burn our lungs if we breathe it too long. Then we better work fast, said Rick Collins, adjusting his survival pack. Team leaders, check in. Medical team ready? Amy Parker reported. She had 20 specialists with her, each carrying emergency supplies and antidotes for common toxins. Engineering. Team standing by, said Maya Torres. Her group carried tools and materials to build whatever they might need. Scouts are good to go, Tony Brooks added quietly. His team was already studying the swamp's edge, looking for the safest path forward. Jake looked back at the alien observation post on a distant hill. Through his binoculars he could see Commander Vextal and his team watching them. The aliens had set up comfortable chairs and what looked like recording equipment. They clearly expected to be watching for a very long time. All right, people, Jake announced. Let's show them how humans do things. The first hour was chaos. The moment they stepped into the swamp, everything went wrong. The water was deeper than expected, reaching up to their waists. The smell was overwhelming, like rotting eggs mixed with dead fish. Within minutes, 3 team members were vomiting from the toxic fumes. Masks aren't working, gasped Chris Bailey, the young engineer. The acid is eating through the filters. Switch to Plan B, Amy Parker called out. She had prepared for this. Everyone take the anti-nausea pills now. Chris, can you modify the breathing apparatus? Already on it, Chris replied, his hands working quickly on a device. If I reverse the airflow and add this alkaline powder, it should neutralize the acid. While Chris worked, Tony Brooks was making discoveries of his own. The plants aren't just moving in the wind, he reported. They're actually hunting. Look at this. He pointed to a twisted tree whose branches had wrapped around a small animal. The creature was already dissolving, becoming food for the plant. Great, muttered Ben Clark. Carnivorous trees, what's next? We adapt, said Dr. Grant firmly. She was already collecting samples of the water and plants. Kelly, I need you to document everything, every plant, every toxin, every reaction we have. Kelly Martinez nodded, her camera and recorder working. Constantly. Got it, Doc. But why are we collecting all this data if we're moving fast? Because other humans might come after us, Dr. Grant explained. And because understanding one part of this course might help us with the others? By the second hour, they had made their first breakthrough. Chris Bailey had created working air filters, and Amy Parker had developed a basic antidote for the most common toxins. But the real discovery came from an unexpected source. The water moves in patterns, said Kelly Martinez, studying her recordings. It's not random. There are currents like rivers, but underwater. Maya Torres immediately understood. If we can map the currents, we can use them to move faster. We won't have to fight against the water. But how do we map something we can't? See? Asked Ben Clark. We make it visible, Maya replied with a grin. She pulled out a container of harmless dye and poured it into the water. The bright blue liquid immediately began to flow, revealing the hidden currents. Brilliant, said Jake. Tony, can your scouts follow these currents? Already moving, Tony replied. His team was spreading out, using the dye to find the fastest. Paths through the swamp dot up on the observation hill. The aliens were beginning to take notice. Commander Vextal leaned forward in his chair, watching the humans with growing interest. They are moving much faster than expected, said Kithara, a young alien observer. Most species spend weeks just analyzing the water composition. Yes, Vextal replied slowly. They seem to be learning as they go instead of planning everything in advance. Back in the swamp, the humans were making rapid progress. They had divided into specialized teams, each solving different problems simultaneously. While the scouts found safe paths, the engineers built tools. The medical team treated injuries, and the scientists gathered data. "I've found something," Dr. Grant announced during the third hour. She was studying a particular plant that grew near the water's edge. This plant seems to be immune to the toxins. If I can extract its natural defenses, we might be able to create better protection. How long will that take? Asked Jake. Give me 30 minutes, Dr. Grant replied. You have 20, Jake said with a smile. We're not slowing down. While Dr. Grant worked, the other teams continued their advance. Chris Bailey had discovered that the toxic water could actually be used to power small devices if properly filtered. Maya Torres was using this power to run pumps that cleared safer paths through the deepest parts of the swamp. "This is incredible," said Amy Parker, treating a minor acid burn on one of the scouts. "We're not just surviving this place. We're using it. That's the human way," said Rick Collins. "When life gives you toxic swamp water, you find a way to make it useful." By the 4th hour, they had crossed nearly half the swamp. The pace was incredible compared to what the aliens expected. Most species would still be setting up their first camp and analyzing soil samples. "The trees are getting thicker," reported Tony Brooks, "and more aggressive." "They're actually reaching for us now, then we don't get within reach," said Maya Torres. She had been working on a new device, sonic emitters. The sound waves should confuse their hunting instincts. "Will it work?" asked Jake. "Only one way to find out," Maya replied, activating the device. The result was immediate. The hunting trees recoiled from the sound, their branches pulling back. "Like wounded animals. Outstanding," said Jake. "Keep those things running." The 5th hour brought their biggest challenge yet. The swamp water began to bubble and steam, rising in temperature rapidly. The toxic fumes became thicker, and even their improved masks were struggling. "It's some kind of chemical reaction," Dr. Grant observed. "The water is literally boiling." "With poison, can we get around it?" asked Jake. "Not without going back," said Tony Brooks. "This covers the whole area ahead of us." "Then we go through it," Jake decided. "Ideas, people." "I might have something," said Chris Bailey. "If we can create a cooling system and combine it with Dr. Grant's plant extract, we might be able to walk through the boiling water." "Might?" asked Ben Clark nervously. 70% chance, Chris replied. "Better odds than going back. I like those odds," said Jake. "Do it." The next hour was a race against time. Chris Bailey and Maya Torres worked together to create portable cooling units while Dr. Grant mass-produced her plant extract. Amy Parker prepared medical supplies for anyone who might get burned despite their protection. "Ready," Maya announced. "But we need to move fast. These cooling units won't last long." "Then we run," said Jake. "Everyone stays close, no one stops for anything." The dash through the boiling swamp was terrifying and exhilarating. Steam rose around them like fog, and the water bubbled and hissed with chemical reactions. But the cooling units worked, and Dr. Grant's extract protected them from the worst of the toxins. "We're through," Tony Brooks announced as they reached solid ground on the far side. Behind them, the swamp stretched back toward the entrance, looking like a vision from a nightmare. Ahead, the second biome awaited, a desert that shimmered with heat waves and unnatural colors. 6 hours, said Jake, checking his watch. "We just crossed a swamp that was supposed to take most species several years." On the observation hill, Commander Vextal stood up from his chair for the first time. "Impossible," he said quietly. "They cannot be moving this fast?" "But they are," said Cathara. "Commander, what if they actually complete the course?" Vextal did not answer. He was too busy watching the humans prepare for their next challenge, moving with the same incredible speed and adaptability they had shown in the swamp. "Prepare for the desert," Jake announced. "And remember, we're just getting started." The desert stretched before them like a burning ocean, its red sand shifting and moving in patterns that hurt to look at. The temperature readings on their instruments showed numbers that should have been impossible. The air itself seemed to glow with heat, and strange lightning crackled across the sky in colors that had no names. "Temperature is 160 degrees, reported Dr. Lisa Grant, wiping sweat from her forehead despite her cooling suit. "The sand contains metallic particles that conduct heat. Walking on it would be like walking on a hot stove." "And the lightning?" asked Captain Jake Morrison, studying the unnatural electrical storms above them. "Electromagnetic discharge," said Dr. Ryan Cooper, the team's physicist. "The metal in the sand creates a giant conductor. Those lightning bolts carry enough power to run a small city." Tony Brooks, their lead scout, was studying the desert through his binoculars. I can see structures out there, ruins maybe, but they're at least 50 miles away. That's where we need to go, Jake said, consulting the course map the aliens had provided. The exit to the third biome is somewhere in those ruins. Amy Parker checked her medical supplies. At this temperature, we'll start suffering heat stroke in less than an hour. Even with our cooling systems, we can't survive long enough to cross 50 miles of this. Then we don't cross it, said Maya Torres, the chief engineer. We find another way. Such as? Asked Ben Clark nervously. The communications officer had been growing more worried with each challenge they faced. We use the desert against itself, Maya replied, her mind already working on the problem. Chris, remember what you did with the toxic water? You turned it into a power source, Chris Bailey nodded. You want to use the lightning? Exactly, and the heat. And the metal and the sand. Instead of fighting this place, we make it work for us. Rick Collins, their survival expert, was studying the ground. The sand moves in patterns, like the water in the swamp, but faster. If we could ride those currents instead of walking against, then a sandboat, said Kelly Martinez suddenly. Like a sailboat, but for sand instead of water. That's crazy, said Ben Clark. We don't have time to build a boat. We don't need to build one, Maya said with growing excitement. We can modify our cooling units. Remove the cooling elements, add some metal plating, and create a hovercraft that rides on the sand currents. Dr. Grant was already collecting samples of the metallic sand. If we can magnetize the bottom of our vehicles, we might be able to use the electromagnetic field to help us move. And the lightning? Asked Jake. Power source, said Dr. Ryan Cooper. If we can build lightning rods and storage batteries, we can capture the electrical energy and use it to run our equipment. The idea was ambitious and dangerous. Most species would spend years studying the desert, building elaborate shelters, and waiting for the storms to pass. The humans were planning to surf through it in homemade vehicles powered by the very forces that were supposed to kill them. All right, Jake decided. We have 2 hours to build whatever we need. After that, we ride the lightning. The next 2 hours were a blur of activity. Maya Torres led the engineering team in converting their cooling units into sand-riding vehicles. Chris Bailey worked on the electromagnetic propulsion system. Dr. Ryan Cooper built lightning collection devices that looked like metallic umbrellas. This is insane, muttered Ben Clark as he helped carry materials. We're going to get ourselves killed. Probably, agreed Tony Brooks cheerfully, but we're going to do it fast. Amy Parker was preparing medical supplies for the journey. I've mixed up some heat-resistant gel. It should help protect us from the worst of the temperature spikes. How long will it last? Asked Jake. Maybe an hour, Amy replied. 2 if we're lucky. Then we better not take longer than that, Jake said. Dr. Grant had made an interesting discovery about the metallic sand. It's not just metal, she reported. It's some kind of crystalline structure that responds to electromagnetic fields. If we can tune our equipment to the right frequency, we might be able to control our movement more precisely. What frequency? Asked Maya. I'm still working on that, Dr. Grant replied. Give me 10 more minutes. While the scientists worked, the scouts were studying the desert's patterns. Tony Brooks had noticed something important. The sand moves in cycles, he reported. Every 30 minutes, the currents shift direction. If we time it right, we can ride a current that goes straight toward the ruins. And if we time it wrong? Asked Ben Clark. We end up in the middle of the desert with no way back, Tony replied calmly. I love this job, Ben muttered as the deadline approached. The team gathered around their improvised vehicles. They looked like metallic surfboards with lightning rods attached, powered by batteries that crackled with stored electrical energy. Everyone clear on the plan? Jake asked. Ride the sand currents toward the ruins, said Rick Collins. Use the electromagnetic fields to steer. Avoid the biggest lightning bolts. And if something goes wrong? Asked Amy Parker. We improvise, Jake replied, like always. The moment they launched onto the desert was both terrifying and wonderful. The sand vehicles shot forward like rockets, riding the moving currents of metallic particles. The lightning crashed around them, but their collection systems turned the deadly bolts into power for their equipment. "This is incredible," shouted Kelly Martinez over the roar of the sandstorm. "We're actually doing this." "Don't celebrate yet?" Tony Brooks called back. "We've got company." He was right. The desert was not empty. Creatures moved beneath the sand, drawn by the electromagnetic disturbance of their vehicles. They looked like giant worms made of living metal, their bodies crackling with electrical energy. "Sand serpents," Dr. Grant observed. "They're attracted to our electromagnetic signature. Can we outrun them?" asked Jake. "Not for long," replied Maya Torres. "They're gaining on us." "Then we don't run," Jake decided. "We turn them into allies." "How?" asked several voices at once. "The same way we've been doing everything else," Jake replied. "We use the environment." "Ryan, can you overload one of the lightning rods?" "I can make it discharge all its stored energy at once," Dr. Ryan Cooper replied. "But it'll destroy the rod." "Do it. Aim for the biggest serpent." The lightning discharge was spectacular. The bolt struck the largest sand serpent, but instead of killing it, the creature seemed to absorb the energy. It grew brighter, faster, and began moving in the same direction as the humans. "It's following the electrical trail," Dr. Grant realized. "The lightning created a path, and the serpent is following it." "All serpents follow the leader," added Tony Brooks. "If we can control the big one, the others will follow." The next few minutes were like riding a lightning bolt through a sea of living metal. The sand serpents became their escorts, their electromagnetic fields helping to stabilize the human vehicles. The creatures moved through the desert like they were swimming through water, and the humans rode in their wake. 30 miles covered," reported Kelly Martinez. "We're making incredible time." "Too incredible," said Ben Clark nervously. "This is going too well." He was right to be worried. Ahead of them, the ruins were becoming visible, but so was a new problem. The sand was changing color, becoming darker and more solid. "It's not sand anymore," Dr. Grant observed. "It's some kind of hardened glass." "Glass that's still hot enough to melt steel," added Dr. Ryan Cooper, checking his instruments. "And our vehicles won't work on solid ground," Maya Torres realized. "We need the sand currents to ride on." "Then we make new currents," Jake decided. "Ryan, can you create a controlled lightning strike to fracture the glass?" "That might work," Ryan replied, "but the explosion will be massive." "Do it." The lightning strike hit the glass desert like a hammer. The explosion was visible from miles away, sending cracks racing across the surface like a spider web. The glass shattered into millions of pieces, creating a new kind of sand that their vehicles could ride on. "That was either brilliant or insane," Amy Parker observed as they surfed across the shattered glass. "Why not both?" Jake replied with a grin. The ruins were ancient and massive, built from some kind of black stone that seemed to absorb light. The structures rose from the glass desert like the bones of giants, their surfaces covered in symbols that pulsed with the same energy as the lightning. "This is it," Tony Brooks announced. "The entrance to the third biome." They had crossed 50 miles of deadly desert in less than 4 hours. Above them, the alien observation ship had moved closer, its occupants staring in disbelief at what they had just witnessed. "The frozen wasteland is next," Jake said, checking the course map. "Anyone getting tired yet?" "Just getting started," replied Maya Torres, already thinking about the challenges ahead. "Good," Jake said, "because I have a feeling the aliens are about to realize they seriously underestimated humanity." In the observation ship, Commander Vextel was having the same thought. The humans had just accomplished something that should have taken years, and they had done it by turning the deadliest environment in the course into their ally. "They are not like other species," he said quietly. "No," agreed Cathara. "They are something entirely new." The frozen wasteland stretched endlessly before them, a nightmare of ice and wind that made the desert look welcoming. The temperature had dropped to negative 200 degrees, cold enough to freeze their breath before it left their mouths. The wind carried ice crystals that cut like knives, and the ground was covered in a layer of snow so deep it could swallow a person completely. "I can't feel my fingers," said Chris Bailey, flexing his hands inside his heated gloves. The young engineer's breath formed clouds of ice that fell to the ground like tiny hail. "The heating systems are struggling," reported Maya Torres, checking her instruments. "We have maybe 6 hours of power left in the thermal units." Captain Jake Morrison studied the frozen landscape through his protective visor. In the distance, he could see the fourth biome marker, a tall spire of black metal that rose from the ice like a frozen lighthouse. It was at least 40 miles away across terrain that looked impossible to cross. "Historical records show that most species build permanent settlements here," said Dr. Lisa Grant, reading from her tablet. "They wait out the worst storms and only travel during the brief warm periods." "How long are these warm periods?" asked Amy Parker, the medical officer. "About 6 hours every 2 weeks, Dr. Grant replied. "And we have 6 hours of power left," said Ben Clark grimly. "Perfect timing." "No," said Jake firmly. "We're not waiting 2 weeks. We're not even waiting 2 hours. We go now." "Captain," said Rick Collins, the survival expert, "this isn't like the desert. We can't turn cold into heat." "We can't make friends with blizzards. Maybe not," Jake replied. "But we can think differently than everyone else has." Tony Brooks, their lead scout, was studying the ice formations around them. "The ice isn't solid," he reported. "It's layered." "Different types of ice? Different densities?" "Some of it is almost like glass." "And some of it contains air bubbles," added Dr. Ryan Cooper, the physicist. "The structure is more complex than it looks." Maya Torres was getting an idea. "What if we don't try to cross the ice? What if we go under it?" "Under it?" asked Ben Clark. "You want us to dig tunnels?" "Not dig," Maya said. "Melt. Create our own path through the ice layers." "With what?" asked Amy Parker. "Our heating systems are already running at maximum power." "Not with heat," Maya replied. "With pressure and chemistry." Dr. Grant looked up from her tablet. "The ice contains different chemical compounds. If we can create the right reaction, we might be able to weaken the structure from the inside." "Like controlled explosions?" asked Chris Bailey. "More like controlled melting," Dr. Grant corrected. "We find the weak points in the ice structure and exploit them." Jake was beginning to understand. "We create a chain reaction. Melt one section and it weakens the next section, which weakens the next." "Exactly," said Maya, "like dominoes but with ice." The plan was dangerous and untested. They would need to move fast, stay warm, and hope their calculations were correct. Most species would consider it suicide. The humans considered it Tuesday. "All right," Jake decided. "We have 4 hours to reach the spire. That means we need to move at 10 miles per hour across broken ice in a blizzard, while creating controlled chemical reactions," added Dr. Grant. "And not freezing to death," Amy Parker pointed out. "Piece of cake," said Kelly Martinez with a grin that was visible even through her face mask. The first hour was a nightmare of cold and wind. They moved in single file, with Tony Brooks leading the way and Maya Torres behind him, placing small chemical charges at key points in the ice. The charges didn't explode, but instead created reactions that weakened the ice structure. "It's working," Maya reported. "The ice is becoming more brittle. We can break through it instead of having to climb over it." "Temperature is dropping," warned Amy Parker. "We're at negative 220 degrees now." "That's impossible," said Ben Clark. "Our instruments don't even go that low." "The ice is affecting the local temperature," Dr. Ryan Cooper explained. "It's creating its own weather system." As they moved deeper into the frozen wasteland, strange things began to happen. The ice around them started to glow with an inner light, and they could hear sounds coming from deep beneath the surface. "There's something alive down there," said Tony Brooks, pressing his ear to the ice. "Alive at negative 200 degrees? asked Chris Bailey. "That's impossible." "Everything about this place is impossible," Dr. Grant reminded him. "But we're still here." The sounds grew louder as they progressed. They were rhythmic like a heartbeat, but coming from miles below the surface. "It's not just one creature," Tony reported. There are dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Should we be worried? Asked Kelly Martinez. Probably, said Jake. But we're not stopping. The second hour brought new challenges. The ice began to crack around them, not from their chemical charges, but from the movement of whatever was living beneath the surface. The cracks created chasms that were impossible to cross and ridges that blocked their path. We need to change tactics, Maya Torres announced. The ice is becoming too unstable for chemical weakening. Then we use the instability, Jake decided. If the ice is already breaking, we help it break in the right directions. How? Asked several voices at once. We wake up whatever is down there, Jake replied, and we make it work for us. The idea was crazy even by human standards. They were going to deliberately disturb creatures that had been sleeping beneath the ice for who knew how long. But it was also typically human. When faced with an impossible situation, they found a way to make it work in their favor. Dr. Ryan Cooper began setting up a resonance device. If I can match the frequency of their heartbeats, I might be able to communicate with them. Communicate? Asked Ben Clark nervously. With what? With whatever is smart enough to survive in this place? Ryan replied. The resonance device sent sound waves deep into the ice. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The entire frozen wasteland began to shake, and the creatures below responded with sounds that were clearly not random. They're answering, Dr. Grant realized. This is actual communication. Great, said Amy Parker. Now what do we say? We ask for help, Jake decided. We show them that we're not a threat and that we need to cross their territory. The conversation that followed was unlike anything in human history. Using patterns of sound and vibration, they established basic communication with the creatures beneath the ice. The beings were ancient, older than the course itself, and they had been waiting for someone to talk to them instead of simply trying to survive in their domain. They're offering to help, Dr. Grant translated from the sound patterns. They can create paths through the ice. In exchange for what? Asked Jake. Stories, Dr. Grant replied. They want to hear about the outside world. They've been trapped under the ice for thousands of years. So they told stories as they traveled. Kelly Martinez described Earth's oceans. Chris Bailey explained human technology. Amy Parker talked about medicine and healing. The creatures listened and, in return, created tunnels and bridges of ice that allowed the humans to move at incredible speed. This is amazing, said Tony Brooks as they traveled through a tunnel of living ice. The creatures are actually reshaping the environment to help us. They're lonely, Dr. Grant observed. They've been isolated for so long that they're grateful for any contact. The third hour brought them to the edge of the fourth biome, but it also brought a new problem. The radiation levels ahead were so high that their equipment was failing. We can't go into that radiation field, Amy Parker warned. It will kill us in minutes. Then we don't go into it, Jake decided. We go around it. Around it? Asked Ben Clark. It stretches for miles in every direction. Not around it horizontally, Jake clarified. Around it vertically. We go over. Maya Torres understood immediately. We build a bridge. Out of ice. With the help of our new friends, added Dr. Grant. The ice creatures were happy to help. They had never built anything that reached so high, and they were excited by the challenge. Working together, humans and ice beings created a bridge that arced over the radiation field like a frozen rainbow. This is impossible, said Ben Clark as they walked across the ice bridge, hundreds of feet above the deadly radiation. Impossible is just another word for difficult, replied Kelly Martinez. I'm starting to believe that, Ben admitted, the fourth. Awa brought them to their destination, the entrance to the fourth biome. It was a massive door made of the same black metal as the desert ruins, but covered in ice that never melted. We made it, said Tony Brooks. 40 miles in 4 hours across the most hostile environment in the course. And we made friends, added Dr. Grant, waving goodbye to the ice creatures who had helped them. The fourth biome is next, Jake announced. Reading the course information. Radiation desert with 3 times Earth's gravity. Sounds fun, said Maya Torres, already thinking about the engineering challenges ahead. It will be, Jake agreed. Because we're going to do something no other species has ever done. What's that? Asked Chris Bailey. We're going to finish this course in less than 24 hours, Jake replied. And we're going to show the galaxy that humans don't just survive impossible challenges. We turn them into opportunities. In the alien observation ship, Commander Vextel was no longer sitting. He was pacing, his forearms moving in agitation as he watched the humans prepare for the final challenges. The radiation desert was unlike anything they had faced before. The ground glowed with an eerie green light, and the air itself seemed thick and heavy. Each step felt like walking through thick mud, and their equipment groaned under the crushing weight of gravity 3 times stronger than Earth's. Radiation levels are off the charts, reported Dr. Lisa Grant. Her voice strained from the effort of speaking under the increased gravity. And this gravity is going to exhaust us in minutes. How long to cross this section? Asked Captain Jake Morrison, each word requiring effort as his body fought against the crushing weight. Tony Brooks consulted his scanner with shaking hands. 20 miles to the temporal maze entrance. At this gravity, moving normally would take US days? Then we don't move normally, said Maya Torres, though she was breathing heavily. We use the gravity. Use it how? Gasped Chris Bailey. It's trying to crush us. Exactly, Maya replied, her engineering mind already working on the problem. If we can't fight it, we make it work for us. Dr. Ryan Cooper understood first. Kinetic energy. The gravity can power mechanical devices if we design them right. Like a gravity-powered slingshot, added Kelly Martinez, despite the strain in her voice. More like gravity-powered transportation, Maya corrected. We build devices that use the weight to propel us forward. It seemed impossible. The radiation was making their instruments fail. The gravity was crushing them. And they had less than 6 hours left to complete not just this biome, but also the final temporal maze. Most species would have given up. The humans got creative. I need 30 minutes, Maya announced. And all the metal we can spare. You have 20 minutes, Jake replied. And whatever materials you need. The next 20 minutes were a blur of desperate engineering. Maya Torres and Chris Bailey worked together to create what looked like a cross between a skateboard and a catapult. The device used the crushing gravity to store energy in compressed springs, then release that energy to launch the user forward at incredible speed. It's basically a gravity-powered rocket sled, Maya explained as she put the finishing touches on the first prototype. The heavier the gravity, the more power we get. And if it doesn't work? Asked Ben Clark nervously. Then we become very flat pancakes, Maya replied cheerfully. Amy Parker had been working on the radiation problem. I can't stop the radiation from affecting us, but I can slow down the damage. These pills will give us maybe 2 hours before the effects become serious. 2 hours to cross 20 miles and solve a temporal maze, Jake calculated. We need to move fast. Fast is what these sleds are designed for, Maya assured him. The first test ride was terrifying. Chris Bailey volunteered to try the prototype, and the moment he activated it, he shot forward like a bullet fired from a gun. The gravity that had been crushing them became their ally, propelling him across the glowing desert at speeds that would have been impossible under normal conditions. It works, Chris reported breathlessly over the radio. It actually works. I just covered 2 miles in 30 seconds. Outstanding, Jake replied. Everyone pair up and mount up. We're riding the lightning again. The journey across the radiation desert was like surfing on a roller coaster built by madmen. The gravity sled shot them forward at incredible speeds. The radiation made everything glow like a nightmare, and the landscape blurred past them in streaks of green and black. This is either the most brilliant thing we've ever done or the stupidest, shouted Tony Brooks as his sled launched him over a crater. Why not both? Kelly Martinez called back, laughing despite the mortal danger they were in. They covered 20 miles in just over an hour, arriving at the entrance to the temporal maze, with time to spare but radiation sickness beginning to affect them all. The entrance was a simple archway made of some kind of crystalline material that seemed to bend light around itself. Temporal distortions are already affecting our instruments, Dr. Ryan Cooper reported. Time is moving differently just standing. Near the entrance, what are we looking at? Jake asked, studying the alien records of the final challenge. A maze where time moves at different speeds in different areas, Dr. Grant explained. Some zones make time move faster, some slower. Some create loops where you repeat the same moments over and over. The goal is to reach the center and activate the completion beacon. How have other species approached this? Asked Maya Torres. Very carefully, Dr. Grant replied. They map each time zone, calculate the effects, and plan routes that avoid the most dangerous areas. It typically takes 20 to 30 years to solve. And we have 4 hours, Jake observed. Less, Amy Parker corrected. The radiation poisoning is progressing. We have maybe 2 hours before we start becoming seriously impaired. Jake looked at his team. They were exhausted, radiation sick, and facing a challenge that had stumped alien civilizations for thousands of years. They had also just accomplished things that should have been impossible. Ideas? He asked. We don't try to understand it, said Kelly Martinez suddenly. Every other species tries to map it and control it. What if we just ... go with it? Explain, Jake requested. The maze is designed to confuse methodical thinkers, Kelly continued. But what if we're not methodical? What if we embrace the chaos? Dr. Ryan Cooper was nodding. Quantum mechanics suggests that observation affects reality. Maybe the maze responds differently to different approaches. You're talking about going in blind, Ben Clark said nervously. Not blind, corrected Tony Brooks. Fast, we split up, move quickly, and adapt to whatever we find. Instead of trying to predict the time effects, we work with them. It's insane, said Amy Parker. It's human, Jake corrected. They divided into small teams, each equipped with quantum communication devices that Dr. Ryan Cooper had modified to work across time distortions. The plan was simple: move fast, communicate constantly, and trust their instincts over logic. The moment they entered the maze, reality became fluid. Jake found himself moving through areas where his movements were slowed to almost nothing, then suddenly accelerated until he was moving faster than thought. Behind him, he could see Maya Torres caught in a time loop, repeating the same 3 steps over and over until she suddenly broke free and shot forward. Time dilation in Sector 7, reported Tony Brooks over the quantum communicator. I just lived through the same hour 12 times. Temporal acceleration in Sector 3, added Chris Bailey. I aged 6 months and 30 seconds, then went backwards. The center is shifting, Kelly Martinez observed. It's not a fixed location. It moves based on how we approach it. That was the key insight. The maze wasn't just testing their ability to navigate time distortions. It was testing their ability to adapt to a reality that changed based on their expectations. Stop trying to reach the center, Jake announced. Let the center come to us. It was the most counterintuitive strategy possible, and it worked perfectly. Instead of chasing the shifting center, they began to move randomly through the maze, letting their instincts guide them rather than logic. The temporal distortions that had trapped other species for decades became their allies, creating shortcuts and passages that led them deeper into the puzzle. I can see it, Amy Parker announced. The completion beacon. It's right in front of me. Same here, said several other voices. They had all found the center simultaneously, arriving from different directions at the same moment despite traveling through different time streams. The beacon was a simple crystal that pulsed with the same light as the maze entrance. Together, Jake commanded. All 16 leaders reached for the beacon at the same time. The moment they touched it, the maze dissolved around them, and they found themselves standing on a platform overlooking the entire course they had just completed. Time elapsed, announced an automated alien voice. 24 hours, 17 minutes. The silence that followed was deafening. In the alien observation ship, Commander Vextel stood motionless, staring at the readings that couldn't possibly be correct. "Impossible," he whispered. "But real," said Cathara. "They have rewritten the course record by a factor of over 4,000%. On the completion platform, the human team was celebrating, but Jake was already thinking about what came. Next, they had proven that humanity could survive in the galaxy, but more than that, they had proven that humans thought differently than any other species. "Captain," said Dr. Grant, "what do you think this means for humanity's application to the Galactic Federation?" Jake smiled as he watched the alien ships approaching their position. "I think we just became the most interesting species in the galaxy." "And the most terrifying," added Maya Taras. "Good," Jake replied. "That should make the negotiations more interesting." As the alien delegation approached to formally congratulate them on their impossible achievement, Jake Morrison couldn't help but feel proud. Humanity had just announced itself to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. They weren't just another species seeking membership. They were a force that could change everything. The galaxy would never be the same.